Hi, I'm Caroline Leavitt. I am the co-founder of Mighty Blaze, the book initiative that began when the pandemic did, which was meant to help bookstores whose doors were shuttered and to help writers and readers connect. Today, this is the most incredible book. First, look at the cover, how beautiful this is and how beautiful this woman is. This is lost, oh, there we are, we're back, by the phenomenal writer Suzanne Finnamore, who also happens to be just like a totally beloved friend of mine. So, let me give you a little bio of Suzanne and tell you a little bit about the book, and then we're going to talk. So, Suzanne Finnamore has published 4 books. She's been translated into 20 languages. Her debut was a Barnes and Noble Discover selection. Her second book was a Washington Post Book of the Year. And I want to say that I first encountered Suzanne at one of her readings, and it was like we just somehow became friends, and we've been friends ever since. So this book is incredible. It's totally incredible. In this book, Suzanne has chronicled how her mother, Bunny, beloved, great relationship, went into dementia, and how it seemed like a whole second country. The book is about coping. It's about what we lose, what we gain. The writing is just so completely gorgeous. And it's a book for anyone who has ever lost somebody to dementia, anybody who might be on the process of that, or anybody who has just lost anybody. It's like just filled of these gorgeous nuggets like rubies shimmering on the page. So first I want to thank you, Suzanne, for being here to talk about your gorgeous book. I'm just so happy to see you and so happy to host you here. So welcome.
Thank you, Caroline. I'm so glad to be here with you. I love you. You're great.
I love you too. So I want to say something. Yesterday, Suzanne, you told me that your mother passed away 2 nights ago, and it was almost as if she waited until your book came out. And you also had an absolutely astounding dream of her before she died. And I would love it if you would tell us all about that dream, because it's amazing. It's just astonishing.
So, my mom, she passed on last Sunday night. And Sunday night, she had been in hospice for over a year. She was really tough. She really hung on. And she had been in final stage dementia for a while. And she had been bedridden for 7 years. So, she's 88. She was 88. She is always going to be 88.
Right.
Right? This is also new to me
Right.
still. Like, what tense do we use? So, yeah, so went to bed Sunday night, and, sometime in the early morning hours, I had a very vivid dream about my mother, Bunny, and, I was standing in front of a roller coaster, and she came down on the roller coaster, and she's whizzing by, kind of slowly, though, there's enough time for us to look at each other and say something, and she's wearing red, which was her favorite color, and she looked amazing. She was young again. She was maybe, I don't know, 35, maybe we're all 35 in heaven. It sounds good to me. And she's wearing red, and she just her face is just alight with pure joy, pure rapture. And she comes by me, and I say to her, because a roller coaster isn't something my mother would have normally enjoyed, but, I say to her, "Mom, I'm so proud of you. Look at you on the roller coaster. This is great," you know? And she's like, "Yeah," and she just smiles at me, and we make that connection, and then she goes by me, and she goes up out of frame on the roller coaster, and the next morning, Ron called and said that she had passed right about the time I was having the dream. So, it definitely felt to me as though she sent me a dream from where she was to where I am, to let me know, uh, that it was a joyous homecoming for her when she met all her Puerto Rican relatives again and saw everyone again. And also, I think she was saying, this is how I want you to remember me, not the person lying in the bed
Right.
for years, but this is who I really am. This is my sacred core, and remember me this way.
There's a lot of anecdotal evidence about people who waited to die. They waited for somebody to arrive, or they waited for somebody to leave the room, or there's a
Absolutely.
kind of like the body and the soul, if you want to call it that, knowing what's going on. I'd love it if your mother had, and in the book is a lot about your mother's life, which is colorful, incredible. She entertained enlisted men. She was a professional clairvoyant. Can you tell us about your mother's life?
Well, my mother, we used to call her the last Boricua, and Boricua means someone who was born in Puerto Rico. And so she was the last in our family to be born in Puerto Rico. And she was born in Puerto Rico during the height of the Depression. And her parents were just teenagers. They were not married. And her mother gave her up, I believe, so that she could have a better life in New York, because her birth father was going to New York. And so my mother's abuelita, her grandmother, was really the matriarch. And so abuelita took everyone in hand and got on a steamship, the steamship Boricuan. And they went there. And but when she got there, her birth father did not acknowledge her until she was 18, even though they knew each other. And he ended up being given to her birth father's sister. This is very Puerto Rican. Up for adoption.
Wow.
And I know, right? And that's just like in the
That's
first
like,
few years.
okay.
So her mother gave her up, her father gave her up, and somehow my mother managed to thrive without bitterness, which I always found amazing. And she's just full of love. And yeah, speaking to your early point, my mom waited to die. She waited. It was her and Ron's, my wonderful stepfather. It was her and Ron's 53rd anniversary on that Sunday.
Wow. That's
So I
incredible.
believe that she waited for that, and I also believe she waited for my book to come out, my memoir, which I was able to tell her about when she still sort of could get it, a little
That's a
bit.
gift. That's a
Like a
gift.
couple years ago, I was able to tell her, "Oh, this is coming," and she's like, "Yeah, great," so she waited, my book had been out for, I think, about, 2 weeks when my mom died. So, I think that the timing was important for her.
Oh, absolutely. But your mom also told you, she foretold your marriage to your husband,
Yes,
Tom,
mhm,
correct?
correct.
Which didn't seem possible at the time. And
No, and that's one of the
which
first
is
chapters in
incredible.
the memoir. I think it's like the second chapter in the memoir is I've lost my job during the recession in 2009, and my son Pablo and I had to leave California. We couldn't afford it. And we stayed at my parents live in a double wide mobile home in Hayward, California. So we stayed with them before we left, and she gave me a reading, and that's in the book. And she did see this person coming for me, and it was the love of my life, Tom. So
It's
my
incredible. I
mom,
remember that.
she
I
knew things.
remember us talking about it on Facebook Messenger. You said, "Well, I got this one," and like, look at you showed me. Said, "Look at this picture." Then there was this picture of you with this gorgeous. He gave you a Hermes scarf that
Oh
was
yeah,
draped around you.
right. I mean,
I remember all these details. It was
who does
just
that? Yeah.
wow, wow. It was incredible. So I love one thing that I loved about the memoir is that you talked about dementia in a different way than most people talk about it, and you turned it into a kind of country. It's
Hmm.
like, like Susan Sontag used to talk about illness as a kind of country, especially chronic country, chronic illness, and she's very
Yeah.
right about that. But also in dementia, where you talk about how you have to sort of learn the language and the customs and take them on the terms of the person who is
Yes.
in that country. Can you talk about that a little?
Well, pretty early on, I realized that I was going to well, I realized that my mom was living in 2 places at once. She was living in Hayward, California, but she was also living in dementia, and that the rules there were way different, I talk about how I felt that dementia was like a country, where beloved ancient queens and kings go to retire sometimes, and that when you go there, you have to set your expectations aside.
Right,
Like an umbrella on a sunny day. You just have to set your expectations aside and be there and respect, my mother's agency within that land, and meet her where she was, and where she was not where we were. So, I that and it helped me a lot, creating that division was in one sense accepting the fact of this new terrain and the fact that it's gonna go on and it's gonna go downhill, but that's the terrain.
right.
And also the idea that, there could be treasures found even in the wilds of dementia. You get insights, you grow compassion, suddenly my mother would say something really profound and kind of that she couldn't know about, all of a sudden she'd say something. So there were gifts to be found there, and I also felt that division of making it a separate country helped to keep me from the slippery slope of despair.
That's interesting.
Yeah,
It's
if
really
I could make
smart.
room for it in my geography or in my worldview, then I could more easily bear it.
So you began to write about this, and I remember like seeing pieces of it on social media at first, and then you wrote in the memoir that the writer Augustus Burroughs had encouraged you to write this book. Tell us the story about that. What was that like? Did the writing save you, or did it initially make you feel worse, or was it
Yeah.
scary? What was it like?
Yes, did all those things. Augustine Burroughs has been, my brother from another mother for over 30 years, and we're super close. We both knew each other before we were published, before we had literary agents. We knew each other when we were in advertising. As a copywriters, we were copywriters, and,
Okay, that's funny. That's really
I know,
funny.
right? Well, because I figured out that I could actually make money as a writer if I were in an ad agency, because you very often don't make money as a writer,
Right.
you know, and so I always had my day job anyway, uh, so he's always been there for me for what we call the pool of truth. So we have this agreement, that we're always gonna tell each other the truth, and we call it the pool of truth, and so whenever we're texting, we text pretty much almost every day or emailing, um, we're always dipping in the pool of truth. And he right away said, "Oh, you need to write about this."
He's right.
And he said, "You have to write about this." And I said, "Really? It's going to be just depressing. How can it?" He goes, "No, you have to let randomness enter. Make your creative approach to this topic and yet tell all the hard truths." And so that's what I did. And, I've obviously shared the book with Augustine. And at some point I said, "Hey, it's really, funny and wise things about dementia and losing someone and grief." And I said, "I wonder if it would be all right if I could include some of that in the memoir." And he said, "Oh, sure." And I said, "Well, I'll run it past you, of course." He goes, "You don't have to." He goes, "You can
That's
just
a
write."
good friend.
Yeah, he's
That's
like,
a
but of
wonderful
course
friend.
I did. I ran every word by him. And, yeah, he's like, "Whatever, go for it." And so
Wow.
but again, your friends circling the wagons and your friends and my husband, Tom, and They are the people who are like your like way stations in dementia, where you go off to the side and you spend time with your people, your tribe, and they lift you back up, and they embolden you to go back in again.
What did you expect to learn or to get from writing this memoir, and what did you really get at the end? I mean, what was unexpected when you finished writing this?
Um, I didn't expect anything. I didn't expect it would be published. I didn't expect anything, but I did
Let
kind of
me
know
see.
enough.
Okay.
I knew enough that I thought, wouldn't be the worst thing if I could put together an excerpt or an essay for the New York Times and try to get published there. And amazingly enough, the New York Times op-ed editor, Susanna Meadows, a wonderful, brilliant editor woman, she immediately loved the idea of the essay. And so not only was I able to run a nice piece in the New York Times, but it ran on Mother's Day,
Oh,
2022, right? And
that's great.
I also felt like my mom had a hand in that, like, she's kinda, like, pulling the strings, she's contacting New York through the astral plane and, going back. I mean, none of this is, like, completely unlikely if you know my family. So, yeah, yeah, and so then I realized, okay, now I can think about it. Got good response when it ran, and now I could think about, putting together book proposals. So I did that,
Wow.
and eventually Post Hill Press picked it up,
It's
and then I had to
incredible.
finish writing the other 200 pages. So, but I just did it. I don't know, it really just came naturally. It just felt natural. It's so weird. Like, I think when certain books come out, they just flow, and other books just don't.
I I think also it's because I always tell my writing students when they're looking at the market to see what's selling and what they can write, and I always tell them, you know what, go deep in, find what's unique about you, and that's how it'll become universal. And this book felt to me as I was reading it that there were no barriers there. You were just telling everything, and it was so raw and so honest and so real. And also, I want to tell people it's also very funny in parts.
It
There's
is.
humor in it. There's
Unbelievably, it
humor,
is
in,
funny.
and that's sort of like even sometimes some of the chapter titles had me laughing. I forget what it was, like Bunny the Detective. Bunny the Detective.
Detective
I
Bunny,
laughed
yeah,
when I said
that's
Detective
funny.
Bunny. It's how hard was it to get to that place of humor, and how important was it for you to still
Oh,
be funny and stay funny?
you know, in my mind, that's really job one, is to bring levity into the dark, and, that's what Augustine said. I said, "But it's gonna be so dark." He said, "But people live in the dark."
That's
And I
right.
said,
He's
"Oh,
right.
yeah, we do." So then I thought, "Okay, but if we're gonna go in the dark, then we have to have some dark humor. We have to have some gallows humor." And there was plenty of that, and I had the same experience when I wrote, the memoir that I wrote, Split, A Memoir of Divorce,
Split.
in 2008. It is, in my mind, that's a very funny book, even though you think, "Well, how could it be funny?"
It is funny.
Your
Well,
husband
because
left you, and your child. But I am right away, Carolyn, I was devastated. I was a grease spot, but right away, I started to notice this thing over here and that thing over there that were
great.
actually funny in a horrible way. And so I just grabbed onto those like life preservers, and so I just, that's my MO, is that I try to being funny in the dark, but also being real about how dark it is, and not
Well,
sparing
I
my.
think those two states live side by side, humor and the
Mhm.
other kind of not humorous thing. And I think that it's The humor allows us, it's a flashlight. It allows us to see the darkness a little
That's
bit
right.
more. Yeah, there were so many wonderful lines in this book that I wrote down, and one of them was, you were talking about people who were dead, and you said they're alive now as I tell their story. And
Yeah.
as soon as I saw that, I wrote that down. I thought, oh my God, because this is what writers do. We put these people on the page and they're alive, and they'll always be alive as long as we have it there. My mom's been dead 5 years, but if I write something about her, which I've been doing ad nauseum, she's alive.
She's alive
She's
again. She
there.
gets to live
She's alive
again.
again. And I think it's important to recognize that relationships do not end with death.
No.
How do you envision your relationship with your mom continuing now? Or don't you? I mean, or do you like not have expectations for it? You just think, well, it will, I'll feel her, I know she's around.
Well, I've been feeling her, because she's been, like, I've had many dreams of my mother where she is well and she's walking around in a poncho pantsuit like she did in the 70s, and I always felt like those were visitations with her higher self, like, that she was spending so much time asleep, she was spending so much time in the country of dementia that she is actually crossing over all the time, and that I was getting to
Right.
see her that she was traveling. She was traveling from this life into the afterlife over and over again, I think. And, so I had a lot of dreams about my mom, and they always brought me great joy and amazement. And,
It is amazing. You
yeah,
have you do you have you had different sorts of dreams? Because sometimes I will have dreams and I know they're dreams. And other times in the dream, I think, this is really happening. This is like really weird, but this
yeah.
is really, have you had that kind of quality of dream?
It's funny, all the dreams about my mother, I never know it's a dream. It always feels like it's really happening. It's
Okay.
not those dreams where I go, "Oh, wait, this is a dream,"
Okay.
ever. It's always, like, right there. It's lucid. So, yeah, I mean, and I hope to have more. And, I've been talking to her a little bit.
Oh,
Say,
good.
"Hey, mommy. I
That's
love you,
good.
mommy." Which is the same thing when she could not understand anything else, she always could recognize me, and we would exchange "I love yous." And that's a
That
huge gift,
that's a
for someone
real
that far
that's
gone.
that's a real gift. You know,
Mhm.
I also want to, there's another thing you wrote that I loved, which is that the loss of a loved one marks you. Talk about that. How did it mark you? Do you recognize in other people that who have suffered loss that they're deeper in some way, or
Absolutely. You know, um I don't think we learn from our successes and our fabulous events in our life and our happy times. I don't think we learn from those. I think they make us really happy and they're wonderful to have and they, enrich us for the next, mountain that we have to climb. But I really I just I've been through some things, in the last few years with my mom that have just softened me and made me compassionate and also aware that no matter what somebody's age is or no matter what their quote condition is, they're still 100% them, and that even when we can't see it, they're in there.
right, right,
Yeah. And so I'm much just feel a lot more open to the deeper truths and the things that really matter. And my mother, living in dementia, I saw her go from a woman who would take great care with her appearance to a woman with just a white nimbus of hair and no makeup. And she was beautiful. And so then she's teaching me. She's saying, you don't need appearances. You don't need makeup and clothes and earrings and all those things. They're irrelevant. They're just nice little extras, but they're not the thing itself, you know?
Right. It's true. Loss really is a teacher. I also wanted to ask you. Oh, we have an audience question. Somebody is asking, what advice would you give someone who's just found out that her father has the beginning of dementia?
Get a grief counselor.
Tell us what a grief counselor does for us. Does for
It
people.
gives us a place to put the feelings, because if you're anything like me, you're gonna start to wanna start fixing things, and you're gonna wanna start mitigating the truth, and you're gonna do all that, and you're gonna forget to take care of yourself. You're gonna forget almost to the place where you start forgetting who you are. You just are always worrying and thinking about your
Right.
loved one, you know, and it's so important to have someone to process these things with. And, you know, I'm on my 3rd my 3rd grief cycle now. I just kept upping the ante. I'm like, "Okay, I'm done with you. Now I'm gonna move on to this person. They have this other thing to offer me." And it has really served me, and not just because of the dementia piece, but it served me, you know, as a woman who's 64 and who, you know, you talk Carolyn, you made the point about death, how does it changes you? Well, you know, when I went in, I made sure that they did not take my mother's body before I got there on
Oh,
Monday.
that's good. That's good.
Yeah, I did, and I went and I kissed her forehead, and I told her I loved her and how wonderful she was, and said goodbye many times, and at that point, you know, I'm kissing her forehead and it's already cold. I wasn't freaked out. It just seemed completely natural to me, and like I was in a holy place. Like I was in a
Right.
holy place with my mommy, you know? And on the other hand, don't have to look far to wonder who's next.
Right.
You. So another
Yeah. But isn't the solution to that just sort of being as fully in the moment as you can? Because
oh
you know
my
what?
gosh, yeah.
People die at 8 years old. I mean, you
I
never
know, right?
know.
Yeah.
You never know. It's like the percentages do go up as we get older, but
Dramatically, yeah.
you know, I
But
want to
it's
talk about
okay, it's okay. We can't
see,
live forever.
we're
Only
laughing
our
here.
plastic will.
I want to talk about another kind of loss, which is estrangement, because there's a lot in the book about how you were estranged from your brother. Um,
Mhm.
and that was very moving and meaningful to me because I grappled with my sister estranging me 5 years ago, and I finally solved it by thinking, well, you still can love somebody even when you're not interacting with them. So I would love it if you would talk a little bit about that estrangement and how it worked itself out and the loss and
You know, I'm so glad you brought that up. I think there's a lot of reasons for people being estranged, and I try not to have too much resentment or judgment around the fact that my brother uh, sort of dropped out of sight, you know, when my mom became ill, uh, because I know how hard it is to be and to visit dementia. So, you
right.
know, it's like at first I was like, "Why isn't he here? And why do I have to do everything?" And and then as time went on, I even said it in the book. I said, maybe he's on to something here." Because this is really hard, and I almost became almost envious of his ability to detach, you know? Like I said, I
Right.
wanted to go to his house and say, "How did you do it?" You know? But, so the reason really the only reason that I let that piece have a small, tiny place in the memoir was because I know how common it
Yeah,
is
it is
for
actually.
especially, like, if there's, you know, a girl child and a boy child, it's so much more likely that the girl is gonna end up being the caretaker. It's so much more likely
Right.
that the
Right.
male's gonna just exempt themselves,
Right.
that I wanted other people to know that, "Oh, this happened to me too, and it has nothing to do with who I am or who he is. It's just the way it is," and you can expect that it might happen, and almost like don't don't do yourself the disfavor of having expectations that people can't possibly meet,
Right.
you know?
Right.
Yeah, yeah, so that was that.
Let's talk about creativity. Do you feel do you feel that you're going to be writing again soon? And if so, what will you write about? Or have you already started thinking about what you might write about?
Well, I mean, right now we're working on my mom's obituary. Guess
Oh,
that counts. I mean,
right.
that's
That
a very important
counts.
piece of writing. I don't know, I've sort of reached a clearing because the book just came out and I'm working on the promotion and doing all that other stuff. And I'm just also giving myself the space to not be productive because it's been a long road to get to this place where I have been with my parents and supported them through this terrible disease. And I have also been there for my husband and my son Pablo. And I'm just really interested. Like, I booked a massage. I know it sounds so silly and,
No,
cliche.
it doesn't.
I haven't had a massage in years. And I'm like, you know what? Why not? Why not give
It's
something to
self
myself?
care.
I'm feeling a little tired, and that's where I'm at. I know that the next subject will present itself, and then I won't be able to stop myself from writing about it. But I don't know what that will be.
Well, you don't have to know.
Mhm.
There are some things in life, clairvoyance or not, there are some things in life that you don't know. I wanted to ask, did your mother know that she was going to have dementia?
No, but did she is a good question. She did predict that long ago, she says, "I know when I'm gonna die. I'm gonna die when I'm 81." And she didn't die, but that was the year she was diagnosed. So I think she had some prescience that after, say, age 80, she wasn't going to, for all intents and purposes, be here. That's what I believe. No, and I mean, my mother, and this is true of almost everyone probably, when she was young, she said, "Oh my gosh, if I ever become senile or dementia or whatever, just smother me with a pillow." And we all say that until, of course,
Yeah, we all say that until it
I'm
happens. Right,
40
that's right.
Then we're like,
That's what I
"Oh,
tell my
there."
husband. I just
So, I don't think she knew, and I don't think she would have been pleased if she knew. But, that's the great mystery. I think death is also a signature. I think we all, in some respects, plan our own death, and it's like the flourish on our signature as we leave, of like, this is how it's going to go. And no matter how grisly or short or long your life is, I think
right.
that these things are written. That's what I believe.
It's so funny because my mother, who had an atrocious relationship with my father and seemed to virtually hate all men, I really believe that she did this as a gift to me. But when she was 93, she fell in love for the first
I
time.
remember that.
And the interesting thing is, my mother was fine, and she was with Walter until she was like 98, and then dementia started coming in. But during the dementia, my sister and I agreed that we were not going to tell her that um, she had dementia, and we were not going to tell her that Walter had fallen the week before and that he had died. So she spent the last 4 years of her life believing that Walter was with her every day. And I had never seen my mother so happy. And when my mother died, I just felt like saying, thank you, thank you. Because that was such a beautiful gift. It was a beautiful
So
end of her
beautiful,
life.
Carolyn.
It was absolutely
Like
beautiful.
I said, she worked it out. She said, "Well,
She
this
worked it
life,
out.
I'm gonna have some trouble with men, but at the end, I'm gonna make up for that, and I'm
And
also gonna show my
boy,
daughter the real woman of me,
Yeah.
that was hiding under all the bullshit,
They had sex. They had a physical relationship too,
Of
which
course
made me
they
feel,
did.
oh my God, good for my mom. I
Mm,
loved it. I mean, to me, when
glorious
I think of my mom,
glory.
you think of his smile. Okay, well, I want to remind everybody out there that Suzanne's amazing book and all her amazing books, and they are all amazing, can be found at bookshop.org. I made it easy for all of you by putting a link right up in the chat, or you can walk to your favorite indie bookstore or wherever books are sold. I want to thank you all for being here, and especially Suzanne. This was so wonderful. I want to show this gorgeous cover again. Have you ever seen a more gorgeous cover? I mean, this photograph is just, how old was Bunny in this photo?
She's, she's about 8.
Oh my gosh, such a
She's at a
gorgeous.
wedding. It's a big New York wedding. All the Puerto Ricans were there, and that was I zoomed in on the picture there, yeah.
It's incredible. It's an incredible photograph and an incredible book, and very helpful. And also, as I want to stress, also very funny. So I'll see all of you next week. And Suzanne, I'll see you on social media. I love you. And thank you so much for being here. Oh, wait, somebody just said, what a beautiful conversation. Thank you both. Thank you. Somebody else said, oh my, how lovely, Suzanne. From
Thank you so
Sylvia. This is from Sylvia Chica. I'm mispronouncing your name. I'm so sorry. Bionani. It's a lovely name and I'm butchering it. Forgive me. But that's what she said. So I will see everybody again. Suzanne, I'll touch base with you on social media in like 2 seconds, probably.
Alright, love you all. Thank
Love
you.
you too. Bye bye.